Okay, before we get started with our panelists, a quick call out to our virtual attendees. We have several hundred, so if you have questions for the panel, please send them in. I think you can direct message at BelTech, and that will get us eventually to us. So thank you very much. And as way of introducing the panel, I'm going to ask them the first question. Could you tell me a bit about yourself and maybe your organization? Carlos, if you'd like to start.
All right. I think I already said quite some information, but yeah, Carlos Alzate, AI Fund, Senior AI Advisor.
Cool. Thank you. Gillian, our participant on Zoom, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Gillian. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect working in the productivity and communication applications family of services in AWS. And my team builds solutions to help kind of accelerate and enable adoption of those new technologies. We work with our service teams, with our data scientists, our field teams, and also directly with customers. And obviously AI is a pretty core part of every service these days, but my biggest focus at the minute is AI in the contact center, including one of my favorites, which is conversational AI.
Cool. Jonathan?
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Armstrong. I'm a senior AI engineer at Cirdan. We're a medical technology company, and I largely work as part of the AI team then building AI offerings right across imaging, natural language. We develop basically our customer needs to try and speed up diagnosis for patients.
And Wendy.
Hi, my name is Wendy Kelly. I'm a senior team manager within the AI COE at Allstate Northern Ireland. I think everyone's familiar with Allstate. We are a subsidiary of the Allstate Corporation, who are one of the largest protection and liability insurance companies in the US. We provide business support services in terms of technology, data, cybersecurity and finance services to our parent company. We are located across 3 locations in Northern Ireland. We're one of the largest IT employers in Northern Ireland, so we are based here in Belfast, and we have 2 locations in the northwest, one in Derry and one in Cirdan. As mentioned earlier, my role is within the AI COE, where I lead a team of engineers in developing voice analytics applications, where we receive call recording data from our call centers. We transcribe that data into audio, and we apply AI redaction modeling to remove PI data such as credit card information. And then we persist that data downstream for further analytics such as sentiment and intent analysis and entity extraction.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you all. So, as you would have heard from the talks, there's a lot of excitement in companies in the business around AI, but there's also a fair bit of skepticism. Sort of, Wendy, to you, how do you convince a skeptical business that AI is going to make a difference?
So, a few years ago, we raised a business case with our business partners, and it was entitled, "What Does It Feel Like to Be Blind?" So the intent was to highlight the fact that we had fundamental gaps in our understanding in what made some of our agent-to-customer interactions successful in terms of leading to buyings or sales, and what didn't. So this was a huge void, and also, a huge cost to our business in terms of missed opportunity. We're processing millions of calls every month, and it's simply just not possible to listen to call recordings to understand, which per interactions, for example, may have led to us losing a sale or a bind. So we knew we needed to employ AI and analytics to help bridge that gap, but we had to convince our business, and to do that, we suggested that we run a pilot. So we got business and agency approval to do so, and we proceeded with running a pilot and engaging with a company who specialised in speech analytics for call centres. The pilot was a huge success, and that it really helped us generate valuable insights into understanding that agent-to-customer interaction. From here, then the AI Community of Excellence at Allstate invested more heavily in building out that AI development skill set within the area. And we went on to build out our own AI models, for example, for sentiment analysis that Shane has mentioned earlier, to really understand how is the customer feeling during our calls. So, you know, is the sentiment positive? Is it negative? Or is it just okay? Also, we have models for intent analysis. So what's the overall intent of the call? And entity extraction. So, you know, to help us categorize the call. So, I mean, this modeling has really helped us understand further the overall customer's journey with Allstate, and really helps us with future interactions and preempting and predicting future needs. In addition to that, we've also seen that we now have a better understanding on how our agents are performing. So we have AI-enabled scorecards that can provide immediate feedback, so it's visible to our agents that some of their interactions may have been less than optimal. So really it's enabled us to evaluate, diagnose, and prescribe you know, how those agents can improve their overall interactions, so to course correct their responses.
So from a piloting perspective, were you able to get the data back to the business quite quickly to get them bought in?
Quite quickly, and I think that really gave us credibility as well in helping, you know, to sort of gain more momentum then to move forward with developing out further models.
Is that a similar story for the other panelists? Again, it's that going after a small pilot to build confidence and then take it from there? I'm seeing several nods.
Yeah, very much so. You know, I think in medicine that's one of the crucial things. You build up a small data set with a partner hospital. Quite often we work on, 12, 14-month projects where we sit down with them, we see their day-to-day needs, then we build an initial pilot, and it's through an iterative process. You can then build upon it, and so that when it finally signs out, you have all that data to support a regulatory approval, but also you have that buy-in from the customer that maybe they were skeptical initially. You have that buy-in because they saw how the process worked.
Cool. Thank you. So moving on to the next question. So leadership in companies become very excited about AI and ML to an extent that they want it in every solution you deliver. How do you go about persuading them that AIs ML may not be right for everything? I suppose I'll throw this to Gillian.
I think the key here is ensuring that you always try to get to the heart of the problem that you're trying to solve, right? At Amazon, they call that working backwards. I know in Liberty IT, we spent a lot of time doing that business problem exploration before you started anything, and helping people see that, you know what, sometimes the solution you need isn't very exciting. You don't need ML models to detect a driving license number, policy number if they're always in the same format. You can do this easier and cheaper. And really looking at the true business value for any problem and balancing that with the cost and the risk is a really good way to have those conversations. Often leadership that are new to AI, they may not understand that you're taking on something that is not going to be perfect 100% of the time. And it's going to need kind of continued investment to maintain it and improve it. There is a huge scope to bring value to your company, but it's not magic. It's not going to replace all your staff magically tomorrow. And it's not just going to be once and done. You put it out there, your business is perfect now. And another thing to consider is that companies, many companies need to invest significantly in modernization and getting the right specialists in-house so they can properly take advantage of AI. And that's a huge ask, right? You're asking people to move away from things that they know, that they've possibly made huge investments in, and take on something they don't know. And working that out is going to involve really sitting down, planning out a strategy, looking for those pilots that are going to give you those quick wins, and build confidence, but also convincing people to, meet those long-term goals and get to a position where they need. Because I know everyone sitting here really believes that AI is important for business, but if we let leadership push AI when they are not ready, or where it doesn't make sense, then there's a risk that it fails. And you end up with a leadership that's gone from excited to skeptical, and now you miss out on those future opportunities where they would benefit because they just aren't willing to invest anymore.
Cool. Thank you, Gillian. Anybody want to add anything from the panel?
Yeah, I would like to add a bit to that. So a specific example is in the area of road safety. So we typically build companies, but we also take sometimes occasional external investments. I mean, we do external investments. And there was this company that were doing a lot of analysis on tires, right? So there was a lot of sensors on the tires and how to predict the degradation of the tire to go to a very dangerous level. So brilliant company, rockstar team, very talented. They already, very lean company also. They were very early, but they already have a lot of paid projects. And when they were doing the pitch, they were always mentioning AI and machine learning. Yeah, we use AI and machine learning. Okay, so can you please explain what you are doing? And then they started to show some plots, like random plots. I was like, okay, I was thinking like, yeah, they don't know what they are saying. And then, after getting deep into that, I realized that basically it was a regression plot, a 3D regression plot. So I was like, okay, so can you explain more about this? And then I realized that they really didn't need AI, right? They had a lot of sensors on the tire. You have first principles, white box model, physical equations that work very well. There was no need to do AI or to do regression or to try to solve the things through AI, but they felt the need to put it there because some investors will like to see, okay, what is sexy about your approach? I mean, what is the AI? But then in that case, for instance, they removed the AI part because it was not really needed. So, and we convinced them that, it depends to who you pitch, right? But I mean, now is the case where companies pitch to many funds and they pick up the ones they want. So that was not a problem if they didn't have AI. I mean, if a company if an investor is pushing for putting AI in your development, probably that's not the right company you want to go after.
Yeah, certainly a number of the tools that we're now using to massage/clean the data for AI is allowing us to see more features and visualize the data better, which then gives you results like what you have. So you don't need the AI at the end. You may just need the ability to bring in those newer tools to get more out of your data. So, Jonathan, certainly, how do you go about explaining some of the AI you use to your customers?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different aspects to of that question. When we're talking about clinicians, it's a very different side, but I think it all centers around largely, does your customer trust that you know what you're doing? So if you can show that through different methods, we do quite a bit of research into actual explainability using metrics, developing new explainability methods to understand why a specific image was classed as cancerous. But if you show them that you're doing that and also show the motivation behind it and build their trust in the whole process, and then that they're part of that step-by-step iterative process, that's going to make a far bigger difference to how much they trust and how much they are, interested in your product or in using AI.
Anybody else want to add? No? Okay. So, so looking at the challenges, and again, we've touched on them in a number of the talks, that companies are having adopting AI. There's a lot of talk about MLOps, and we've all read the white papers and the theory. What does that actually look like now in practice, in the reality of some of the companies you've been exposed to or some of the companies you're working in?
Yeah, I think for us it has been a very interesting journey. Since MLOps is kind of as you mentioned, there is a theoretical, there is this very popular plot, right, with the feedback loop and all these things. But actually in practice, the term is a bit vague, and what you actually need to do, it depends on the vertical, or at least that's what I have seen, for instance, in the companies of our portfolio. So for instance, Landing AI, it's the company that I showed the first example with the defect detection. They are I mean, they are an MLOps company for the manufacturing. So it's a whole kind of embodiment of MLOps, particularly for this vertical, for the manufacturing level, where you kind of take the common things of MLOps, but then you adapt it to your particular domain. And in the same, I also mentioned Credo AI, which is the company in AI governance. It's also MLOps, right? But it's a bit bigger, right, than MLOps. MLOps is focusing much more on the technical side, but in AI governance, you are also interested into risk and presenting the right information to the right persona, right? It's different to present results to an ML engineer or to a policy officer, as I mentioned before. We also have an MLOps company for the fintech, right? So our approach is more like, okay, we take the common or the general concept of MLOps, but we specialize it with a specific vertical.
Cool. Certainly, panelists, anything you'd like to add?
I would be quite interested in Carlos' view on this, but MLOps is probably one of the things we find most difficult in medicine because, you go to regulatory approve an algorithm or something like that. A big part of MLOps is that continuous development, that iterative process. And a lot of times, at least historically, it has been you lock down an algorithm, you get it approved, it maybe takes 6 months, 8 months approval. By that stage, the algorithm's obsolete. So, you're running, it's a difficult approach. So one of the things that's starting to come out is around the life cycle approach. So as long as every step in your process has been vetted and approved, how you annotate your data, how you develop, what clinicians you work with, etc., that makes a bigger difference. But medicine still is difficult to really, truly implement MLOps.
Interesting. Certainly that would be the experience in insurance, where it's the compliance side, and again, being able to protect your production environment and determine how do you engineer so that your models can be moved in and out and retrained, but ensuring there's no ability for a human to touch it per se. So those are turning into engineering challenges, where again, you need that wider team of software engineers as well as your data scientists and your model builders. Good.
I think building on that and the sort of, looking at that bigger picture, not just your technical MLOps, but your governance, privacy, there is the other side of it in the implementing for real and that user experience and things like that, where you have AI that's touching, directly on customers and they're using it directly, having your people who are really skilled in user experience for web apps. Do they understand how AI works? Do they understand how to describe it? Do they understand how to, design a good conversation for, a call center chatbot? So it's changing at all levels. It's changing the whole operations, right from data science, software engineering, up to user experience in your business. So everybody in the process cycle needs to kind of shift their understanding and change how they're thinking about things to really be successful in a real life implementation.
Cool, thank you. So the major cloud providers are starting to provide AI platforms. You've got Amazon SageMaker and like Google Vertex AI. What uses are you finding for these versus a company building their own custom AI platform for what they're doing? So Jonathan, if you want to.
Yeah, it probably goes back to our first talk and some of the talks that we've had throughout the day on sustainability. An awful lot of times, unless you have quite a unique situation or quite a unique data set, an awful lot of times these platforms offer good basic AI algorithms that will generate as good a result as you'll need in the real world, unless you're heading into research. And so if you sort of approach it from the sustainability point of view, and a data center will be obsolete in about 4 years. If you buy a nice big cluster, you have only 4 years to use it, locally. So if you're putting everything on the cloud, you can always evolve, and it means that then all your customers are on a very similar standing. So if they push something to get its inference, AI inference on an image or whatever, each customer will have the same sort of times. It doesn't depend on how old their servers are locally. So it's a good bit, it's far more practical to use these services than just host things locally.
Any other comments from the panel?
I think it's about finding where your differentiators are, Brian. I think find out where the differentiator for your business is, focus all your energy on that. And then where things are commoditized, use what you can. So you've got your energy in the right places.
Cool.
Yeah, and one of the things in that as well, with regards to that, from an NHS point of view, they have announced their architectural principles, and one of and everything else. You know, it makes a lot more sense to have things consolidated.
So at this point, I'd like to call for any questions from the floor or from the virtual attendees. Where I get blinded by the spotlights. Oh. No. I think. Oh, we have a question.
I'm always the same guy.
Well, that's okay.
The other people just tell me the questions. A question for Carlos. So you work for a company that probably see a lot of AI-related projects, right? So you say you have to assess all those projects. You decide which one are good or not. And eventually, you spin up something. But do you believe there are some kind of there should be some kind of ethical concern around which fields are suitable for AI applications and which are, let's say, less suitable? I'm talking about, for example, using AI to get inside of things that are not strictly beneficial for the customers. For example, digital reputation or financial digital reputation or something like that. So when you have your talks within your company, do you follow some guidelines, or do you think that those should be driven by governments and regulation rather than companies themselves?
No, we
Thanks.
we typically, I mean, it's part of our principles that, you know, we only work on things that we believe move humanity forward. So we have already discarded several ideas that it didn't go with these principles. And to give you an example, of course, we won't work with military applications and things like that. And for instance, one of our companies was working with a defense contractor in the US. And that was a bit controversial because when we created the company, it's part of our principles, right? Not to work on military applications, but the company already, let's say, graduated from the fund. It already grew, and, you know, it's already weaned, right, from the fund. And then they are completely independent, right? We typically, one of the partners of the fund stays at the board and has some, you know, voting rights and some power, but at that point, you know, the companies are kind of independent. Also for the company, it was not really, it sounded bad because, you know, it's military applications, but then we realized that whatever they were planning to do was not really, you know, affecting human life or things like that. So when we create the companies, we are very careful to, you know, work on things that will have a benefit for the whole, you know, mankind, and not for specific profit of a, you know, of a business. To give you another example, there was a company that we were considering to invest in, and what they do is so you give them a website, a URL, and it will rephrase everything. So it was a kind of a summarization engine, but rephrasing everything. And it was targeted for students. So, you know, it's like, okay, what are you doing? When we were asking the co-founder was like, okay, what are you doing to avoid plagiarism or avoiding students, you know, using this for anything? And then the reply was a bit weak, right? In the sense that basically the person said like, yeah, anyway, if we don't do it, anyone else will do it. So in that case, for instance, we say, no, we don't invest in this. Even, and the NLP and the technology was brilliant. And my main concern was, I mean, apart from the ethical concerns of this, was also like, come on, is the wrong target? Why are you targeting students? You might target someone else, maybe. I mean, they were also saying like, it also helps you, write. So for instance, I struggle a lot with my PhD thesis. I always get the kind of message from my PhD advisor that I was too concise. So for me, I will benefit from a tool like that where you can expand on a topic. I tend to say things very, very clear and very concise. So for instance, for this kind of audience or with real barriers for students to use, or to misuse, I mean, not only for students, but for anyone to misuse this in the terms of plagiarism. So to answer your questions, we have something that is written in stone, right? The things that we will work, and if it doesn't feel like it's for the benefit, a global benefit, then we wouldn't do it.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are at time. So I would like to thank the panelists, Wendy, Jonathan, Gillian, thank you, and Carlos. And also like to thank the other speakers that were part of the What Next track, Jordan, Gordon, and David. And finally, also Kevin, who was kind enough to host from the start of the track. So thank you all very much.